Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casazza here in the morning after well, I guess it depends what time you went to sleep. A loss for West Virginia in the Frisco Bowl. Big portion of the people know that. Exciting loss. Fantastic finish. Man, Chris, pretty much, oh, why do they play these bowl games? No one's interested. That's the common thought. The response is what you saw for the last, I don't know, probably 25 minutes of clock in that game. The final like 2 minutes were absolutely insane. West Virginia does lose 42-37. I don't know where you begin, but except for the end, a two turnover play that ends up with just one turnover. West Virginia comes out with the short end of the stick. Had a chance to make something happen. Questionable clock management, some coaching decisions on either side that we can talk about. Um, and yet you're kind of left with a memory here in place of a win, which when you lose, that's probably the best you can come up with, especially in a season like this. I don't think anybody's gonna write books about 2024, but people when they look back on this, they'll probably remember, if they have a memory of this season, what happened in the Frisco Bowl and especially what happened toward the finish.
Yeah, I think if this were anything but the Frisco Bowl again, or my apologies to Scooter's Coffee. I know that's your favorite coffee. Would you like to hold up something? And there you go. There you go. I said it during the game. They started hawking it on the TV broadcast, and I was like, "This looks like Mike out here, a shill for
Mhm.
Scooter's Coffee." But that was, the last almost I would go up to 3 minutes of the game because the decision not to call timeouts by West Virginia with the 2 minutes before it was just mind-boggling after it had already been an issue in the first half. Now, granted, this is Chad Scott's first ever game as head coach. But I still think I'm not making any year zero excuses here for him because he has been around football for a very long time. So I think he should have known to have called the timeouts before the 2 minute warning, or excuse me, 2 minute timeout. Um, then Ryan Silverfield, I don't remember him ever being very high on the old flop board, if at all. Yeah, really. Let's just say I'm glad he wasn't on there because his decision making throughout this game was absurd. And then his decision to attempt a 50-yard field goal when they had basically done whatever they wanted um, offensively throughout the game. I think they had like fourth and a two, like a long two, maybe. Um, get that 2 yards, ice the game, it's over. But attempting a 50-yard field goal when you have had issues with your kicker all season long, and even the one of the made field goals that he had, I think was the second made field goal earlier in the game, that came off like a duck, like a dead, dying duck. It was not going end over end. No, it was like a knuckleball. That was egregious. And then West Virginia gets the ball. First play was it like a 20-yard pass to Hudson Clement, and I'm thinking, oh God, West West Virginia's going to win this. Like it might actually happen. And in the blink of an eye, that pass over the middle, was it triple coverage, quadruple coverage? Obviously feeling rushed because he had just run before that. The clock didn't stop. He slid before the first down marker. So then the clock really didn't stop. It just kept running. Just, and then it was just a comedy of errors from there on out.
Yeah, I want to get back to the finish, but just some general stuff about the game, Chris. West Virginia finishes 534 yards and they lose. It is the third time in the 11 games in the Neil Brown era that they lost with 500 yards. So not easy for them to get there, and somehow they lose this one. And there are other games they do it, Albany, Duquesne, Towson, Long Island, Eastern Kentucky. So it's not often that they do this against an FBS team. And to squander those and lose, ooh, that's tough. Garrett Green, I don't know, Chris, that's probably the best I've seen him play. Is that fair? Like he's had some good moments. He's had some great dual threat games, but there was a devil may care attitude in this that I don't think it happened. That people are like, oh, it's his last game. He's going to let it fly. He looked really serious. He looked really into the comeback when it was imminent when it was obvious he was going to have to do something crazy. He's 29 for 40, Chris, 328 yards. He adds 95 yards rushing. I believe you have a note on that for historic purposes. I'll let you have, but also makes two really curious plays at the end that's going to be your Garrett Green in a nutshell kind of a thing. And then the Memphis defense was really good for a while, and then I think just went down to the stockyards in the second half and just like didn't really, or maybe the second quarter, I guess, and never got back in time, and just really close to losing this game. And I think everything, even though we didn't know much about Memphis, I mean, I didn't see them play a ton this year. I watched parts of a couple of games and flipped through a couple this year. But what their stats say is pretty much what they are, and they stuck to it. Apart from the fact that they didn't possess the ball because West Virginia was intent on playing keep away. They had 20 more snaps and 7 more minutes of possession. And Chris, they're stacking 15, 17, 12-minute plays, 12 play drives on top of each other when they're down 18 points. And yet it still felt like West Virginia was moving fast and threatening Memphis the entire game. Just a whole lot going on here in different directions, and sort of fittingly, it funnels from 17 nothing to I think an 18-point lead at one point to holy cow, West Virginia may win this game, and they're driving with seconds left and a crazy finish. But there were some significant performances both sides. And overall, for a full 60 minutes on a Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, pretty entertaining game.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like that at first. I think it was what 15, 20 minutes into the game, I texted you and I said, "Hey, you just want to record the rapid reaction podcast before the game is over? We could be done in like 10 minutes because we can put forth as much effort as WVU is putting forth at this point in time." West Virginia's offense started the game with a three and out, three and out fumble and turnover on downs that took 7 plays to go 21 yards and took up 4 minutes. Um, and it was just, I think at that point, that was when it was 17 nothing. And I, like I said, I texted you, it's like, what is this? We might as well just pack it in. And then they followed that with touchdown, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Not bad. Not
Yeah.
bad at all. Garrett Green, 300 plus passing, 95 rushing, first ever in WVU history to go 390. I actually looked it up thinking, here comes the only players to do this, Garrett Green and Pat White. I didn't realize Pat White had never done it. Obviously, the 300 yards passing part was the thing that kept him from getting it. Yeah, in my back of my mind, I was like, oh, yeah, the big pit game, and that was 200, 200, which is even more impressive, but not a 300 and a 90. And I don't know, it's that game was Garrett Green in a nutshell. I felt like he was explosive. He made some big plays. He made some big throws. He made some bad throws. He ultimately was the biggest reason West Virginia was even in the game, that was even had a chance. And then ultimately, a lot of people are going to remember that final play where he throws the interception. It was a bad pick. Like it was just a bad decision. He was obviously rushed because the clock was moving. And I think a lot of people are going to remember that instead of the fact that he was the only reason West Virginia was even in that game.
All right, let's get to this then. Let's get to the final sequence here. It's 4th and 2 with 55 seconds left at the 31-yard line, Chris. This somehow ends up being a 50-yard field goal. They back the ball up even longer, I think, for the kick. And I don't know, like Steven Gostowski is not walking through that door. Like I don't know what other Memphis greats there are in the kicking lore of that school, but it ain't that guy. And he blasts one way right. West Virginia takes it. Um, the run on third on second and long. I'm trying to get the number in my head here. I want to make sure I have this right. 2nd and 5 at the 41. 41 seconds left, Chris. Green runs, and the whole slide go forward thing. Boy, that's one I bet you he wants to have over. I would put Cole Taylor on that list too because he was there when Green breaks the pocket to the middle, and Taylor just widens out toward the sideline. And if he's just there for a big body, he sets a block. The clock stops, and you don't lose. I think it was 14 seconds in my notes. Chris, on 3rd and 1, do you clock it? What do you think?
I usually hate the idea of clocking it on third down. So,
Okay.
but
You don't throw an interception, I guess.
no, you don't
And
do
like
that.
you're right. A couple of people are going to pick that off. The guy who picks it off is the person who's covering Rodney Gallagher on a play that they ran a couple times during the game, or at least some variation of it, where the safety maybe. I'm trying to figure out. No, that was a linebacker actually. Who had a really good game. Their two linebackers are good. They both had double-digit tackles. Um, Martin at least had 15 or 16 at one point, and so did Herring. Had 10 or 12, I forget. But Herring is covering him, and if he doesn't pick it off, the deep middle safety is coming underneath, and he picks it off. And there might have been another guy in there too, but just just a bad decision there. I don't know. Like you got to do that one over. And for a guy who's played a lot of football and has been in this 2 minute hustle situation so many times that they pride themselves on, got to be better in both those. Don't think that has to be stated, but he could have gotten some help on third down. And then, yeah, I was just wondering in my head the whole clock thing. I don't know. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of snaps left, but you're at least going to get a good third down snap. Maybe you get the right personnel in to run short yardage. I don't know, just an idea. And then the fumble, which is crazy. I don't know why the guy didn't go down right away. The game's over. He decides that at 230 pounds, he's going to have I don't know, an 85-yard interception return, maybe. Don't know. Perhaps everybody gives up. But you could see Preston Fox coming from 15 yards away, and you're just thinking, oh my gosh. I was in my head thinking he's going to get him because I didn't think the guy was going to slide. And then sure enough, the linebacker who intercepts the ball is 5 or 6 yards up the field. And just as Fox is swinging his arm back to punch the ball out, a Preston Fox play, I guess, if you've ever seen one. I've never seen the kid play defense before, but I would assume he plays defense like that. He'd fit good on Memphis, right? The guy slides, and once you begin the act of a slide, that's pretty much the same as a whistle blowing. So anything that happens after that doesn't matter. And the game effectively ends with the fumble coming off the board. I believe Johnny Williams recovered it. West Virginia would have had 8 seconds for 21 yards. Whew, crazier things that happen than that, right? Instead, West Virginia does not lose possession. Memphis retains possession. And then Silverfield does the right thing, Chris, and takes a knee. He didn't hand it off. We didn't have the miracle in the Meadowlands or whatever, the fiasco in the Frisco Bowl. No risking it. His great decision of the day, just take a knee. Uh, but yeah, just a whole lot going on there too. Let's start the rule. Do you like the rule?
No, I mean, you know what the first message was in my inbox after that happened was West Virginia is losing a bowl game because of a rule created for a Pitt quarterback for Kenny Pickett. That's like, eh, you're not wrong, I guess.
Not wrong.
That's
I got a. I think people got mad at me before early in the year when they were like they should have subjectively enforced these rules. I can't even remember what it was. It had to do with Garrett Green sliding, I think, right? Um,
that was that the one where he slid like on third or fourth down
they
when no one
overturned
was
it.
around him? No,
Yeah,
I mean he had no reason to slide and came up
just
short
gave
because
himself
of
up, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so now the other side of this, and it hurts again, is like a linebacker is the same as a quarterback. Once you slide, it's player safety, and you're giving yourself up. It's so you can't pick it the other team, I guess. But sometimes I wish, Chris, that they could put on the cool glasses and look at plays that way. You know, you get under the hood, and like a filter comes down, and like there's like colors and explosions and good music, and you're looking at it playing like this is really cool. I should let this stand, right? Just so you're influenced or something like that, rather than looking at it, like a boring, neutral, unbiased, ethical official. We don't need those in the Frisco Bowl, Chris. I want someone who can look at it completely subjectively and say, "Nah, this is cool. I want to let this play stand." That should be the judge, jury, and executioner is how much fun and entertainment and memory can we draw from this one play? Because if that happens, West Virginia gets the ball, 8 seconds left, snap it one more time. I think even quietly Memphis would be like, you know what? They probably deserve possession. That Fox made a really good play. Our linebacker made a bonehead play. We deserve to lose that ball if they're going to make that play. I don't think anybody have a problem with that. I don't think that guy was trying to fake, I don't know, Brandon Yates into thinking he was letting up, and then he's going to pop up back on his feet and run down the field and continue his interception return. I understand the rule. I just don't like the rule. But as soon as I went to review and I was thinking, oh boy, I know how this ends. And it overlooked some of the mistakes before, but that's a pretty rotten way to end the game, too. I understand it's earned, it's the rule and all that stuff, but still, that's a bummer way to end the game. The interception's the big play, but still, that asterisk at the end is that officiating necessity, not decision, necessity.
Yeah. No, I mean I thought something similar with some of the catches. Like, look at this amazing one-hand catch, and the ball grazes the ground, and it's like, nope, doesn't count. It's like, that's unbelievable. But
Mhm.
well, what do you
Let's go to the
think?
start. Let's go to the start real quick too, because
Yeah,
you mentioned too, they had 28 yards in the first quarter. They had 49 yards before a touchdown drive of 75 yards, and then they just couldn't be stopped. And I have some takes on this, including feedback from somebody who we heard from earlier the year in the podcast. I think I'm not sure if I shared it or not, but they they pretty much bought up their game plan and said, "Hey, ball players, play ball," and it worked. Crazy how that happens, huh?
I mean, that was the biggest thing with the first couple drives, especially. It was like, this is so boring and bland, and just nothing's happening on offense. You would normally think the opposite in the bowl game, but they're just not doing anything. And I mean, to his credit, Chad Scott said on the television broadcast when they interviewed him, going into halftime and then coming back out, that they made a change of, hey, we got to loosen it up and we got to go faster. Like that, he just felt that they were going too slow and they were too deliberate and too ordinary, and opened things up and good things happened. I mean, it's a shame that it takes, the fifth drive before you figure that out, when that's probably something that's been talked about every game for a couple years now, especially since Green took over at quarterback, that you just have to kind of let it loose, let it go. But they got there eventually. It was just too late. You just dug yourself too big of a hole, is really what it was.
During the season, I talked to somebody from a Big 12 team. I think I shared it on the podcast. It was after their open week, so probably before the Oklahoma State game. I might have that wrong. I'm not sure. Um, but this person said that they should just be spread and shred. They have a tight end who can make them a little bit bigger, but they have a couple of receivers who can spread you out and make quick turnaround catches, and you got the running back and the quarterback to just one read, two read, dump it if you have to, if not run. And run RPO. And if he can just hit the outside passes and the short passes, just spread teams out and shred them. Short passes, run game. A little bit more complicated than that, but it worked. Like it was Green outside, Green middle, sometimes hit a seam, sometimes when you gobble up all that short yardage, you're gonna bring defenders up and then you're gonna have one-on-ones outside. I don't know how long they would play this game, Chris, before they put a second defender on top of Hudson Clement. A team with three safeties somehow never ended up with a safety over Hudson Clement. I don't get it. It worked though. And I don't know how big the playbook was. I'm going to say it was pretty small. But you take away the motion and the shifting and this patient, passive attitude where you're getting set just to set something up. And instead you say line up and attack. That's a mentality. There's an inevitability to that for the defense too. Like, man, here it comes again. Here it comes again. Because you know you're going to get one of the handful of plays you've seen and you haven't been able to stop it. And there's options built off of that. You could be more exotic, but West Virginia, even while they were just ripping off the short gains, every now and then they hit a big play or a big run. That like Chris, it took them 10 plays to get past the 50 on one drive. And it
Yeah.
still felt like a good drive. In fact, they went down and scored too. So it was methodical, but it was still fast and threatening. And I just think about like this argument, this back and forth that reporters and coaches got into during the season. Can't play 2 minute drill. Can't. Yes, you can. You don't have to snap it every 12 seconds, but like get to the line quick and make something happen, or just have something that you're good at. And like I said this in the pregame podcast that what Chad Scott said about his attack on offense was not particularly inspirational. That it was going to be the same things that they've done and just put your guys in good position. I think what he probably meant was a little bit more like the latter than what we saw in the beginning of the game. They didn't run a whole lot and they ran stuff they were good at and they just kept running it over and over and over and it was working. And if Memphis is going to give it to you, keep taking it. What they did at the beginning was way too slow, timid, and then just for like how you think is how you play. Like, I don't know, look good, feel good, one of those things. But three tight ends in, Chris, on 3rd and 1, and they get stuffed and had to punt it back. And you're just thinking, there's no way back in this. You can't play this way. And they didn't play that way the rest of the game. They played, again, not fast because they had so many plays and so much possession, but they were just threatening. And that should have been their attack, not just all along this game, but they should have had heavy diets that during the season. I think anybody who asked that question and raised that point, probably right. I understand the dispute from the coaches, but There's clearly a way around it. The problem is, man, they were out of gas. Like CJ Donaldson, I'm not sure how many snaps he thought he was going to take based on the way he played in the first half. He took every snap in the second half and was dying out there. And when he's wheezing and you can see him close up, eyes rolling the back of his head. Chris, he caught a 5 yard pass and he ran 3 times for 6 yards in a row in the red zone and scored. Like they were like, no, I don't care. You're getting the ball. You're going to do something with it. And he rose to that challenge too.
Yeah. I'm looking at those drives in the second half. I don't think it's a great idea when you're down 2 touchdowns late in the second half to put together an 8-minute drive. That's just my thought on that.
Mhm.
Um, and their 2 drives were 7 minutes and 51 seconds, West Virginia's,
Incredible.
and then 6 minutes and 32 seconds. When they were down 12 with 10 minutes to go, they put together a 6.5-minute drive. I think that's the kind of stuff you do when you're up 12, when you're
Mhm.
up a touchdown. You're trying to eat up the clock and score. And they just ate up the clock and put themselves in a hole there. Mike, like, yeah, I was about like, I don't know if that's because they don't have the weapons to make those explosive plays. I mean, is that a safe thing to say, especially with Jaheim White out, even though he has not been 2024, Jaheim White has not been 2023 Jaheim White, but do they have the explosive players? No Traylon Ray, no Jaheim White. That's their
Nope.
deep target. That's their big back or their big breakaway back. They got the big bulldozing back in Donaldson. Clement put together a couple big plays, but that's it, right? Like,
Yeah. They missed Traylon Ray. They just they don't have a lid lifter on the outside without him or Robinson, who question mark. Um, Never heard about him being gone from the team or in the portal or whatever, but did not dress, did not play. And without him, without Ray, you don't have anybody on the other side you can do it, which is why I was so surprised that they didn't devote an extra defender because you don't have anybody on the other side. So why not give some help to the cornerback who's continually not even getting stuck one on one, Chris, continually losing one on one to Clement. They don't have that. It's not Farmer, it's not Gallagher. They're smaller guys who are not going to be good contesting passes in the air. And you can maybe stretch the field a little bit with Taylor, but you're not going to get 50-yard plays like that. So yeah, they do not have that outside of Clement last night. So problematic for sure. Chris, they ran 6 plays from inside the 15-yard line on one drive. It's hard to do. Like that's think about that. That's hard to do.
all right, let me try to combine something because I know there's definitely people listening to this that are like, I don't care. Let's talk about the future. So we're gonna get to that. Like we have a lot of time to talk about the future. We're gonna talk about transfer portal, not today, but transfer portal stuff, assistant coaching hire stuff. We're gonna have all that coverage coming and we're gonna talk about it and everything. But let's combine it with this game. Rich Rodriguez is standing on the sideline. Put yourself in his shoes. You're watching this game, you're thinking of his offense. What notes, what numbers are you writing down going, yep, gotta keep that guy around. Yeah, look at that. That looks good. That would look great in a Rich Rodriguez offense. Who put on a show for their potential future head coach last night?
Clement for sure. Um, is Fox a junior?
Yeah, he's got time. He's got
Fox will
enough.
play for
Yeah.
Fox will play for Rodriguez. Like not just that hustle play, but he'll catch the short passes. He may catch 17 passes in a year, but he'll block. And he had some moments that last night. You saw that. Um, couldn't tell you anybody in the offensive line that's coming back that made my eyes go, yeah, look at that. What a great audition. And yeah, you wouldn't say no to Donaldson and White especially. Like White had a couple good moments there. Donaldson, nice game, but was this the best season for him? Does he fit in a Rodriguez offense? Probably complimentary. So you would take them, I guess. But I think the two that jump out into my head are probably going to be, yeah, definitely Fox and Clement. But don't forget this too. Like when they were really good, people don't really remember these things, but when they had like Mike Villagrana and Josh Bailey and Ryan Thomas, they had like monster tight ends that were just like 6'6", 6'7" dudes who move people around. Never, ever offensive threats. But they were good parts of that offense. And you wonder if like he's sitting there watching a Traylon Davis last night or a Jackson Marco. Like Samarco kind of profiles for what he can do and what Rodriguez likes. I did not see the highlight tape from those guys last night, but I'm thinking that if Rich is watching the game or practice, he's sitting there going, yeah, 88, I can see that. The 81, oh, I can see that. Apart from the obvious ones.
But Mike, this is where I think somebody on the board just hops in and goes, so any new assistant coaches yet?
You want to tie this up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much we can say about that bowl game. Bowl games are bowl games, and they get weird, and a lot of it looked exactly like we thought it was going to look, at least towards the end there. But what else did you take from it?
Well, let me ask you this. I don't
Yeah,
know what to make of this stat, and I'm pretty sure the stat is right. If not, somebody just copy it verbatim and use it. Doesn't matter, apparently. 30 times since the start of 19, they've scored 30 points. Sorry, they've allowed 30 points. So 30 times they've allowed 30 points since the start of 2019. They're 3 and 27, Chris.
that's
What does that
wild.
mean? It's impossible to be good in this year, in the past 6 years, if you can't win when you give up 30. And 3 and 27 is pretty indicative of that. I don't know what to make of it. Like, I think 30
It
points,
tells me they're not good at offense, and they're also not good at defense. I think is my takeaway there. Because they
I think it's
give up
fair.
a lot of points a lot of times, and they can't keep up with the points a lot of times. That's my
Hmm.
takeaway.
Yeah. Coaching staff. Do you want to put your note in here? This is your reporting, not mine.
Oh God, which one?
Well, let's
Uh,
go on Jeremiah Johnson because that's a name that has gotten steam. I'm not sure how many people knew who he was a week ago, but he is on the top of a lot of wish list, hot boards, whatever. And we reported that he was scheduled to interview middle of the week. We said scheduled. I'm looking at it, it does say scheduled because
mhm.
you'd like to confirm those things. And given the environment right now, the climate right now, it's hard to do that. But we heard that there was a talk set and they were going to do it. Can't say with confidence that happened right now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, right now I'm told as of last night during the game, got a text that he had not interviewed, that the Zoom call was set up, that they were planning on it, but it had not happened yet. Right? What does that mean? Maybe that means he was busy. Maybe that means Rich Rodriguez was busy. As you know, he's got to fill a lot of spots on that coaching staff, and he was traveling for the game, and he's probably trying to figure out what's going on with the recruiting and scouting slash transfer recruiting staff. Like, there's a lot of plates spinning right now.
Mhm.
So it could just be that. That's it. Could be West Virginia found another option. You had other people on that hot board that's sitting up on the site, 50% off VIP, by the way. Maybe one of those guys got the call and Johnson got word that West Virginia's good. Don't know. But as of last night during the bowl game, that call had not yet happened.
Something else, and looking into him upon that reporting that he was scheduled to interview, Chris, they had just accepted a bowl game.
Yeah.
So he did not have that on his docket. And I want to say it's the same day or it's the day after that all that stuff happens. It might have been, hey, I can't do it right now. So it might have already happened. I don't think he's off the board, only because I don't have any indication that they picked a DC. Um, we're starting to get ideas that other names are coming. They're all on the hot board there, right? We don't have to go over those right now, right?
Everybody's already reading it. So
Everybody.
everybody.
Where would you put your confidence level in Rick Trickett being part of the staff in some capacity? Because here's what I say, like I've heard the conversations like, oh man, offensive line coach, he doesn't have to go out and recruit. You can because you can pick your 10 recruiters, right? He doesn't have to be the guy who goes out and does it. Maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he just wants to be a guy who, hey, I like this guy. Can we go get him? Can we sign him? Can we get him the transfer out of the portal? Like, I think he'd be okay with that. He knows offensive line talent when he sees it. Does he got to be out there going through 3 cities in a day or 3 high schools in a day? Probably not. You can delegate. So if they bring their assistant offensive line coach with them, that may make sense. But he also may be the offensive line coach. He may be, I don't think he'll be assistant offensive line coach. They put somebody else in charge. You could see, I don't know, a timeshare, Chris, an apprenticeship, something like that. But high confidence level, he's part of the staff.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like one of the most logical. He's been involved with Rich for forever. But to your point, he is 74 years old, 75 years old. I was trying to find it. I looked it up. I found an article over on ESPN from 2016 that says he's 68 years old. So 68 plus 8, 76 years old. Um, I don't know very many 76-year-old. My father-in-law is 76 years old. I don't know if he's really interested in traveling all over the country, talking to high school kids, trying to get them to come to West Virginia. You are seeing a lot of guys that age that don't feel like dealing with this kind of stuff. I mean, look at Nick Saban, look at some of the guys that are retired. Like they're just, this is out of hand. I'm done with it. I do believe, and I've been told actually, that he still loves the game, still wants to coach. So I feel like you're on the right path here because you're right. Like you don't have to have your 10 main assistant coaches as the guys that are your recruiters. You can have Rick Trickett as your offensive line coach and then send out, like you said, your assistant offensive line coach, whoever you feel is most personable, has the most connections, can go out there and bring you in the best talent. So I do think it would have to be somebody associated with the offensive line. I don't think you can keep your offensive line coach in and then send out like a fourth assistant defensive backs coach. Like these offensive linemen are going to want to, interact with somebody that they're going to be coached by. Um, but I have a hard time seeing him doing anything else other than coming up here to West Virginia.
Speaking of another name,
Hmm.
quarterback coach. I'm no longer like confident that it'll be Rod Smith. I think he's got a good chance of that head coaching job down there. Bill Clark's in it as well. I think it has some Zach Alley mentions, who Zach Alley is certainly of interest for the defensive coordinator spot here. But if they win that game, Chris, they got a really nice thing going there. He could probably keep some things together. He might keep stars or some really good players from the portal. Um, he could keep some offensive staff there. There's some continuity. Is he ready to be a head coach? Probably. Like he's been around a long, long time. But also, he's also been Rich's guy for a long, long time. Does he want to come up here and do this and be the offensive coordinator in title only and just coach quarterbacks? Or is there something out here where he can be a coordinator who calls plays? I know of another school in the state that has an opening and probably an interest too. So there's a look for him to obviously Friday night win their bowl game. That's a great job interview for him. There will be momentum for him if he wins that game. If not, Bill Clark's probably in the bullpen. Bill Clark, head coach there, a graduate there. It makes a lot of sense if he wants to get back into coaching. Jacksonville State's going to be all right. If it's not Rod Smith, whether it's by a pretty good job in Calhoun County, Alabama, or a job that's more towards his liking, where do they go for quarterback stuff? And man, the name that I just continue to hear in some capacity would be Rhett Rodriguez. Just knows the position, played it for his dad. I don't know who's known the head coach for 24 years, something like that. I'm actually not even sure how old Rodriguez is. I'm thinking in my head. Boy, I used to know when he was the number one quarterback commit of the 2017 class. Remember that old joke Rodriguez used to tell?
Hmm.
So I got to think he's probably mid 20s right now, but an analyst at Jacksonville State this year. And again, like trying to see through the fog right now. Is he assistant quarterback coach? Is he quarterback coach? I haven't heard assistant quarterback coach. But that would be a pretty interesting hire there because, yeah, it's a big position. Rich does a lot with the quarterbacks, anyways. He's going to call the plays, but that's an option there. But man, no shortage of options for quarterbacks, coaching quarterbacks in this offense too. And then still trying to put pieces together otherwise. But a couple of notes I've gotten that they really are trying to go outside the West Virginia tree, the Rich Rodriguez reunion tree, and try to find ambitious, talented coaches who will recruit, but who will also really whip players up and develop them. Because I think it's a fair critique, Chris, that development stagnated in key players and key positions the past couple of years, and probably especially defensive talent evaluation had to be better too. So get some new eyes in here that are not going to go on what they've known that's worked here before or what they've known that's worked with Rodriguez before. What works in 2025 in college football. That's a way to look at it right now. And then it does seem like they'll have a general manager, probably a new one, and that they are going to have separate heads of high school, junior college, and transfer portal recruiting, which is a pretty broad enterprise considering maybe where it is right now, but where it was. I mean, never mind last time Rich was here, but like when Brown first started, when Dana Holgerson was here, to have that much real estate in your recruiting, your personnel department, that's pretty significant, don't you think?
There's a lot for me to take in there because I got three questions for you. First off, is Drew Fabianich still with the program right now?
I think he's a contracted person. So
Yes.
yeah, so
But I
I
have
don't
not
think that,
heard him being contacting, with these transfers. They're talking to Tolbert Nance, who was the assistant director of scouting, who
mhm.
was, basically Fabianich's right hand man. Now, I don't know how much involvement he had last year, even in the transfers, like actually contacting people, but I have not heard his name at all in the last few weeks at all. So I don't know if he's fully, not out of it, but just not doing the background stuff, like the legwork, finding the actual recruits, doing the scouting, picking out the guys, and then handing it off to the guys that are going to do the recruiting. Maybe that's always been his job, and he's just more and more behind the scenes right now. Um, Second question I had for you.
Chris, would you say that he's out in the cold? Because if he's out in the cold, I have these Scooter's coffee
Oh God,
gloves that he could have right now if he'd like. I mean, just looking out for you, Drew.
I'm not even going to acknowledge that right now. Uh, is it a bad look if Rich Rodriguez's first hire for his coaching staff is Rhett Rodriguez?
I mean, if it's the first, yeah,
Yeah,
it has some
right. Like, I
questions,
mean,
right? If he's seventh, if he's the fifth paragraph of a news release, that offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, running back, like if he's like in a list, it's not so bad. I think you're going to see a rollout of a bunch of these at once, I would guess. But listen, why can't it be a cool story?
yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I don't even think he's unqualified for it. I mean, West Virginia just got done. I think West Virginia's last couple quarterbacks, well, the last one, Tyler Allen, he was an offensive analyst before that. Red
Mhm.
Rodriguez was an offensive analyst. Red Rodriguez played the position of quarterback. He's played it, as you noted, in Rich Rodriguez's system. So certainly qualified. There's just always going to be this cloud of nepotism that's going to hang over that kind of decision. And if you're making that the very first hire that you make in your return to West Virginia, that's I feel like there's going to be people that are going to take that negatively for sure.
Yeah. Um, if it's that and a bunch of Tricketts and Paul Randolph and Jamal Adai, if there's a couple Castillos in there too, like you know what I'm saying, like if it's the go-to low-hanging fruit coaching staff that you could sit down on the back of a napkin and write down, that would probably bug people because that is not what we've been sold behind the scenes or even kind of publicly. That would be bad. But if he's like an outlier because this sounds terrible, but like okay, these are all accomplished, successful group of five power four coaches, and here's a guy who was an analyst for his dad. Okay, but like again, you really could make the argument, I think. I don't know him. I don't know his coaching, but I know he's been with his dad at a couple places now, and there's something about how those two could work together, but also one out of 10 spots, and you can supplement it with an assistant coach. So maybe have two assistants, in theory, because one guy's in charge, but the other guy's not. But if you just look at different things like, well, Bilal Marshall came from VMI to coach receivers and did a pretty good job. Blaine Stewart had never coached in college and was like an assistant position coach in the NFL. I think people are pretty happy with his work. I don't think that you could look at that and say those are bad ideas or this is a bad idea because those are bad ideas. Maybe these are bad ideas, but I don't think anybody's really mad about the work Marshall and Stewart have done the past couple of years. So the name, sure, that's going to come up, but it's not an unusual or even unprecedented move.
Last question for you. Is it a bad thing that he gets at least some of the band back together? I mean, the reason people are interested in Rich Rodriguez, in part, is because of what he's done at Jacksonville State. And the Jacksonville State program has gotten there because their offense is good. And so is it a bad thing if he brings Rick Trickett and Rod Smith and the guys that he had there and that he's had before? Like, I mean, I know that's not. I know there's been the talk of, hey, we're going to do some things different. We're going to have new people here, but I don't know. You put together this staff and they did well. You're going to have. I mean, it's different. This is a different level, obviously. Power four football compared to a team that's transitioning from FCS to FBS. But as far as the offense goes, the scheme goes, what you're trying to coach and teach, I don't think it's a terrible idea to have at least some of the band back together again.
Yeah, and he made that point that he still likes to call plays, but because he loves the game and it's what he wants to do, but he spends a lot of time away from the coaching now, and that made me go, "What a strange but also honest thing to say," right? You would think that he'd probably want to have people there who know what he wants to do, so you could certainly explain that. I don't know you have to have the Jacksonville State offense or the 2006 West Virginia defense. I'm sorry, the Jacksonville State defense, the 2006 West Virginia defense. I don't know if you have to have that. And you could get away with the band reunion on offense because it makes sense. Like, okay, that guy ran the offense at Jacksonville State. Okay, sure, I do that. Or, okay, this guy knows the offensive line and how Rich wants that hard edge on his lineman. Yeah, sure. This guy did a great job of running backs there. Okay, like you could make sense of that. It's a running offense. You got to know the reads and all that. Absolutely, you can make sense of that. It'd be harder on defense, I think. Um, but like again, like Zach Alley, if it's him, sky's the limit, I think, for people are his opinion. Are their opinion of him as a coordinator. Would that be bad? I don't think anyone's gonna be mad. They're not going to catch Zach Galli and throw him back in the ocean, right? It's probably a good coordinator for a couple of years in a row here before he maybe moves on to something bigger and better. That's okay. The other part about it is, Chris, that I know people remembered like and romanticize those years, but it's because of White and Slayton and Renaud and Schmidt and Devine and Stanchek and Isden and on and on and on. Mike Dent, Thomas, Billy Graham, all those guys I just talked about. It's not because the assistant coaches. Like, could you name the receivers coaches through the years? Have a hard time with that, right? So, like, that's not the rekindling of the past, I don't think. So, I don't think you're bumming people out by bringing back assistant coaches, but I don't think you're exciting anybody. Like, yep, here we go. Better be scared, Georgia. Got Steve Bird coaching receivers again, like something like that. Oh, we got Butch Jones back in the house. Beware. Like, that's not happening. People aren't
Why
doing that.
is Steve Berg catching a stray on the podcast today for no
Like
reason?
I was
What
trying to
is
think of receivers coaches. uh, Apologies to the birds. Really nice guy too. But yeah, just that doesn't do it for people. Like a Trickett, yeah, because that's a different cat when it comes to coaching. I don't think people really have followed Rod Smith's career since he was here. No one's pining for Greg Fry to come in. Like that stuff just isn't happening. A lot of strays here now, Chris. I better
ah,
stop. But you
jeez.
get my point. Like the players are the memories, right? If you can get guys to come in and coach him and they're the next wave of memories, you did your job there. But you're not guaranteeing that success by bringing back the coaches. That's the key here. So, yeah, just because you have past success with players doesn't mean you're going to get that with the past coaches. You get your future success with players that, I don't know, reminds you of the past because you have the right coaches here now. Offense in particular. Defense, the coordinator's going to be the head coach on defense. So it could be totally different. It could be a zag. Um, Offense is going to be Rich's offense and his fingerprints and whose fingerprints match him the most, the people he's pressed through the years. So you're okay with a couple people to answer your question.
All right, Mike. So we originally planned to do about 10 minutes on that game, and that was about it.
You're good.
And then spread it out. Then got to talking about coaching staff. You could say for the maybe the last time, WVU did some things we didn't expect, made us change our game plan here a little bit.
Where's he going to be? You have a call? Before we go, do you have a call here? Because I was thinking like 2 days ago he might sit this year out. And now like he's linked to Wake Forest. Man, if you had bottom four resources at West Virginia, enjoy Winston-Salem, man. Because that
Yeah.
place that's skin and bones down there.
And UMass already hired the guy from the defensive coordinator from Rutgers. Is that right?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but I know they got the guy from Rutgers, right? So
He's
that
not
one
getting the
full.
Ohio job.
Yeah. Not many spots left. I mean, if it were me personally, I'd take the year off. Like collect that 4 point whatever $1 million paycheck from West Virginia and relax with my family for a while.
Do you think he'll come to games?
I don't know.
Like
Good
hugs?
question.
Just Neil screaming at Rich about timeouts and going for it on fourth down. I'd love that. All right, that's enough.
Fantastic. Yeah. Let's cut it off before we get in too much trouble here.
It's time to get caffeinated, Chris. And let me
Okay.
recommend one drive-through coffee house for you if you need a little pep in your step early in the morning after a 9 p.m. bowl game that went to 1 o'clock in the morning. Scooters.
Wait, I mean, is that even located anywhere near any of us?
I have no idea.
I feel like
I
this
think
is
it's
one of
like a
those
central
things
tech.
that's like only in the mid, like in Texas and West, and it's
Mhm.
not even like in West Virginia. So
It's like
that's
Tudors.
okay. Yeah.
All right. Coming up on the site, we'll have some post-game breakdown, snap counts, text from game day. People actually did remember, might have to actually put that together. Kind of do some, I don't know, thinking more about like what last game's night was. Last night's game was as like a representation of the past 6 years too. But then fast forward, Chris, football, new regime really hitting the ground running. I think you'll see some coaching announcements before too long, just because they have to. They got to get someone to answer the phones and to make calls.
Oh, real quick, do you think they held off on a couple announcements because of the bowl game? Yeah. Okay.
I think some people still have jobs too and things coming up and like they don't have to because it's so early. Like they don't have to move right now on some things. And there are some games with people like a Rod Smith, for example, or people on that Jack State staff that they'll be free Friday night. So you could see some stuff before too long, I think too. But I think with regard to Jacksonville State, anybody who's there that might come here, I think Rodriguez has an affinity and a loyalty to them to let them finish this on their terms and not interfere because he's done enough right now. That's a terrible thing to say, but like he knows that he's dropped a rock in the water. There's a huge ripple. Let it go. Let them win their game. Finish what he started. And then if you do stuff, move from there. So maybe large scale stuff, a couple of days, but I think you'll see some moves soon.
And one more answer for you. Zero Scooters coffees in West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. There's up and down the Midwest into Texas, a little bit west. Looks like the closest one to Morgantown might be Cleveland, I think is the closest one. So
Well, many people thought I was going to have a new job before too long, based on recent news. So perhaps I'll be looking for jobs in Central Texas somewhere, just so I can
there
get
you go.
I can just walk in and let them know, "Hi, I'm Mike. You remember you sent me all the stuff?" And they'll see what they say. I'm
Hmm.
sure it's just me. Until then, I'm Mike Casaza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.